When a former architect struggles to find life's meaning after retirement, he leans on an augmented reality companion to keep him occupied and satisfy his desires unbeknownst to his family. At a farewell party, Hillary, the CEO's daughter, makes a toast to Felix, a retiree who seems to feel anything but delighted about his retirement. Despite the unfortunate circumstance, the now former senior employee offers his assistance to the architectural firm whenever they see fit. Before the celebration ends, Hillary hands Felix an expensive parting gift, where he finds a pair of glasses called Augie. The employees eagerly explain that it's an augmented reality companion who will help fill in the retiree's newfound free time. Indifferent, Felix claims he needs to pack up and leave for his daughter's birthday, so he excuses himself from the party. During dinner with his wife Anne and daughter Grace, Felix reveals that the firm gave him something else instead of a typical watch. While making light of her husband's retirement, Anne asks her daughter about her birthday plans. Hesitantly, Grace tells her parents about moving in with her boyfriend. Although surprised at her rash decision, Felix and Anne express their support and learn that she has already taken a step even without their permission. While watching the celebrant's childhood videos, Felix jokes that he can now take on a job as a birthday clown. Later that night, Anne checks in on the retiree, assuring him that it's best for the family, to which Felix mindlessly agrees. In his study, Felix watches Augie's promotional video on his computer yet remains unintrigued by the futuristic gift. The device endorses a life away from solitude by analyzing the user's subconscious desires via futuristic sensors and projecting it as a companion. As the reality of Felix's retirement settles in, he jokes about writing a novel while Anne and Grace leave for work. Without anything else to do, Felix goes to the store just like Anne asked him. In an aisle, he notices a customer wearing Augie glasses having an entire conversation with someone he can't see. Curious, Felix drives home and takes his new glasses to the living room. When he wears it, he suddenly hears a woman calling his name, surprising him. Projected in front of the old man is a beautiful young woman called Augie, who acknowledges his bewilderment. Felix can't help but stare at his materialized desire when his wife suddenly calls his phone, interrupting his conversation with the AR. At Anne's work, she contemplates accepting a promotion from her boss Jack, who entices her with increased pay but with longer working hours. Later at home, Felix reads Grace's email about her new place, so he brings it up over dinner with his wife. When he notices Anne is exhausted from work, he shares about the strange woman at the grocery store to brighten her mood, but he fails as she courteously cuts him off to rest. Left alone, Felix wears the glasses and is immediately greeted by Augie, who attentively asks about his day, so he explains that he's trying to get used to his retirement, which the woman is already aware of. Learning that Augie knows about his thoughts, Felix confirms that he's the only one who can see her form, smitten by her unique beauty. Then he continues his story about the woman at the grocery store, which he tried sharing with Anne. Felix finds the grocery woman talking with her Augie unhappy, but quickly recognizes otherwise and denies being lonely himself. When he notices the time, Felix bids goodnight to the AR and removes his glasses. Waking up in a better mood, Felix joins Anne, who opens his prospect of having a consulting firm on his own. Suddenly, the woman takes a call from Jack, earning Felix's attention. When the call ends, Anne reveals to her retiree husband about her promotion offer as executive vice president. Hearing that his wife yearns for the job, Felix congratulates her half-heartedly until she leaves for work. That afternoon, Felix solemnly drives to the beach alone and wears his glasses, seeing Augie wearing outdoor clothing. He deliberately shows his favorite place to the AR and offers his hand to help her climb the lifeguard tower. However, she smilingly declines and climbs by herself, to which he follows. As the pair relishes the tranquil sea, Felix reveals he hasn't brought anyone there, so Augie asks about Anne. The AR registers that the man is taken aback, so she suggests changing the topic. Later that day, the old retiree meets up with his daughter in a cafe, claiming he ran late because of a meeting with Hillary. Grace worries about her mother's concerns about her moving in with her boyfriend. However, Felix reassures her and hands his gift, watching his daughter appreciate her framed young photograph. That night, while watching TV, Felix invites Augie beside him in bed. Suddenly, he sees the AR in her nightwear, a manifestation of his desire. As Augie encourages Felix to make the most of his time, he hears his wife approaching, so he hurriedly hides his glasses, guilt-ridden about his secret companion. Soon, while Anne enjoys her higher position at work, her husband secures partnerships for his architectural venture. Simultaneously, Anne takes more hours in the office with Jack while Felix brings Augie to a date to celebrate his win. That night, Felix prepares a romantic dinner at home for Anne and proclaims his successful partnership for his business. When Anne asks where he would get the capital to start, her husband rages for focusing on the negative instead of being excited for him. Aggrieved, Felix lies alone on the floor, contemplating his behavior and what he should do next. Seeing him downcasted, the AR urges him up and leads him somewhere. Despite arguing with her husband, Anne receives an appreciative text from her boss. In his study, Felix watches the AR company's advertisement about Augie Touch, a tech-embedded trouser that allows the user to feel his desires physically. When the video ends, Felix admits the device will partly satisfy his needs. To help him decide whether to buy it or not, he asks Augie if she wants it, and she says yes. Then Anne walks into the room, making Felix remove his glasses. To make up with her husband, she asks about the partnership, so the retired architect hesitantly shows his presentation. When Anne still worries about the money, Felix reassures her it's fine as their relationship mends. While driving to their friend's place, Anne urges her recluse husband to enjoy himself outside his work. But when they arrive at their destination, Felix claims he's unwell and makes his wife go without him. Unbeknownst to Anne, Felix takes a walk with Augie, who changes her clothes appropriately to her user's discretion just as someone passes through her. Unexpectedly, the retiree runs to his friend Jim, who notices his glasses. However, the elderly man cuts the conversation short and impatiently goes on his way. When Felix walks to a gazebo with a trombone player busking, he joins Augie dance happily to the music. At her friend Kasha's house, Anne tells her about the promotion offered suddenly by Jack. Kasha teases her about it, so the troubled woman opens up about her dilemma with her husband. However, Kasha claims Jim saw Felix happy downtown, making Anne grow suspicious. Soon, the old retiree leads his Augie into the forest park and the icy lake as he constantly admires her beauty. Felix reaches to touch her face but fails, so he makes up his mind and purchases the Augie Touch. Not long after, Felix claims his package and hides it in his study. Later that night, while Anne sleeps beside him, he quietly leaves the room and wears the Augie devices, seeing the AR lead him to satisfy his intimate desires. When morning comes, Felix is woken by his wife's call. Realizing he overslept, Anne informs him she'll head straight to the restaurant for their evening meeting with Grace after work. So Felix relishes his time and endearingly watches Augie beside him in bed. That afternoon, Felix tells Augie that he's afraid to lose their relationship, although he acknowledges that the AR made him see things more positively. Meanwhile, Jack praises Anne at work when the woman notices his Augie glasses. To show her what it is, Jack urges her to try it. Although confused, Anne wears the glasses and exclaims in surprise as she sees another Jack. While the boss hides his shock, he explains that the device projects a companion whom the user's subconscious desires. Exposed, Anne apologizes and leaves in embarrassment. Unbeknownst to her, Felix also uses Augie and intimately engages with his desired companion at home. Then, Felix notices he's running late to meet his daughter and leaves the glasses by the sink. When Anne calls him, he claims to have overslept and hears that Grace was caught in a car accident. Arriving at the hospital, Felix apologizes for being late as Grace and her boyfriend Ben just finished some tests. Remorseful for his actions, Felix weeps while taking care of the bill. When Anne returns home, Felix immediately laments his neglect since he should have driven the young couple. After seeing his hair wet at the hospital, Anne accuses him of infidelity, but her husband denies it. Later that night, the retiree realizes he left his glasses in the bathroom, but his wife, who just finished showering, fails to notice it. The following day at work, Jack makes up an excuse to summon Anne to his room. Meanwhile, Felix shares his worries with Augie, so the AR suggests a new distraction to make him feel better. Arriving outside Jack's building, Anne receives a message from Felix, wanting to fix their relationship and talk about last night. Contemplating, Anne texts Jack that she won't make it and drives home. Unaware that his wife is on the way, Felix builds a fort at the living room, as Augie suggests, where he intimately engages with the AR beneath the sheets. When Felix doesn't respond to her calls, Anne grows suspicious and hurries home. After satisfying himself, Felix declares his love to Augie, just when his wife finds him wearing the glasses in his euphoric state. Shocked, Felix dresses up and tries explaining the situation to Anne, who walks out of the house in bewilderment. When Felix catches up with her in the car, Anne asks him who he sees through the glasses, but he fails to answer, prompting her to leave. Feeling defeated, Felix returns to the living room as Augie tries consoling him. However, Felix refuses to believe the AR sympathizes with him and removes his glasses in frustration. Later that day, Felix leaves voicemails for Anne, unaware she's staying at Kausha's place for support. Dreading the desolate house, Felix leaves to take his meal. When he returns home, he finds Grace, who already knows about the situation. She urges him to win back her mother, but Felix explains he's having trouble finding value with his post-retirement life. Despite his father's issues, Grace calls him selfish, citing his late arrival on the day of her accident. Felix doesn't argue as he admits to his mistakes and watches her leave. Soon after, Felix trudges the beach and claims his spot. Then he wears his glasses and sees Augie, who apologizes for her words. He shares his worries, so the AR insists that his family will forgive him eventually. When Felix claims he misses his wife, Anne suddenly shows up in replace of the young woman. The AR Anne reminds him that she and Grace love him. Through his confusion, Felix smiles, hearing that he's forgiven. But when the young woman returns, he frowns and removes his glasses, deciding to put an end to his unwanted desire. Later that night, Felix messages Anne, desperate to give her time and space to win her back. Tearfully, the woman decides to return home quietly. When Felix finds her waiting on their bed, he apologizes for his mistakes. Anne reveals she also tried Jack's glasses but is unable to comprehend her husband's urges. Felix explains he only has conversations with his projection, claiming it's easier to open up with. Hearing this, Anne insists she chose to be with him and asserts that what the glasses show him is not real. Ultimately, Felix convinces his wife that he'll do his best to change and regain her trust. Soon after, the reconciled couple visits their daughter's new place. Anne greets the young couple and their friend Eve, who just returned from college. Unknown to them, Felix stares at her in shock, reminded of his intimate affair with his daughter's friend. While Anne, Grace, and Ben enthusiastically share stories over dinner, Felix stares absent-mindedly, distraught from being reminded by his temptations. When the married couple returns home, Felix claims to respond to his emails as Anne heads to bed. On the contrary, he retrieves the Augie glasses stocked away in the garage and places them on the floor with a hammer in hand.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.